ಫುಲ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು ಸರ್, ಈಗ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಓಕೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ತೊಂದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್. ಎಸ್, ಗುಡ್ ಸರ್.
Good afternoon, all the participants there. Now, for the next two sessions, we are going to discuss few of the soft skills required for the teachers. There are so many skills, but I'll be highlighting on mostly on three of the soft skills like communication, problem solving, and critical thinking skills, which are very much required for a teacher both inside the class as well as outside the class. So there are several life skills and soft skills have been listed by WHO. So to list a few, now you can see at least the 10 major one. I think few of them already covered by other experts. So starting with the problem solving, then creative thinking, self-awareness, interpersonal relationship, management of stress or stress management, decision making is another part, critical thinking, empathy, good communication or communication skills, and management of emotions. So all these things will be highlighted by WHO as one of the major requirements for what you call effective management both in personal life and professional life. So today's class we are going to highlight only three of the what you call important skills like communication, problem solving, and critical thinking skills. So directly what you call going to communication skills. So these skills, okay, where we try to express our intentions or ideas to the other person through various forms. That means what? It's the ability to use language and express information when it comes to verbal communication. But when you use the what you call gestures and postures, we'll be discussing later, it will be like more of non-verbal communication, and it could be even written communication, it could be even touch communication, or it could be even chemical communication. So there are varieties of communication aspects would be there, and the more we master them, it will be better for your day-to-day effective living. Then when you talk about effective communication, especially classroom side, really you need to develop few of the skills which already in the previous session I have discussed about effective classroom management, how communication plays a major role. Now, when you talk about all these things, what are the goals of communication? This is more important. So, without having the goals of communication, one it's difficult to forward for our future endeavor. So there could be at least what you call five types of goals the experts have identified. The first goal itself is to change behavior. I'll come to that in detail later. And to get an action, then to ensure understanding, to persuade, and to get and give information. Now, when you talk about the changing of behavior, the first aspect of communication goals, remember when students come what you call raw to the institutions, the first level the communication is given through orientation program, and this is basically given to them to have a change in their behavior which they have not even understood what are the importance of communication and other things and how to behave in the new campus. So that's where to get an effective change behavior, that's a one aspect in the this one in the beginning. And even in inside by your communication process, you can change a lot of things among the students, so where behaviors can be modified for a better living rather than what you call having a standstill life. So that's the one thing. The change of behavior can happen even inside the class or even outside the class, and this has to be made very clear in the initial stages of the classes only, that what are your expectations from the students, and you should even get what you call the requirement of the student, that what they expect from you. So when both things are what you call mutually understood, there could be some amount of changes in the student behavior likely to be changed in your behavior too, because now you have to be what you call, you have to be aware of the students what you call expectations. And the students expectations today is very much different from what the students were expected 10 years back or 15 years back. So accordingly you have to change your behavior, the way of teaching style. So that's where the first action or goal of a communication is to change the behavior. The next level is to get action. So when you change the behavior, it leads to some kind of action too. So this is where the action part here is not, though it's completely what you call indebted in what you call a physical source, but even a psychological source and even academic source, where you try to get an action from the student, starting from what you call attending to the class till getting a what you call good grades. From there, if the communication is good, definitely you can achieve this. Then the third communication goal would be to ensure understanding. Understand this one part important because last class as I highlighted, because the moment you use jargons and other tough languages in any language, the student finds it difficult. So then the communication goal will be failed. So are you managing the communication goal with the simple words and simple way of explaining to them, so that the student can understand better? Remember, once the student understand better through a good communication, the performance or the output also better. Then to persuade, this is what our teachers all we do. We repeatedly persuade them to tell, to study, to study, to study, to become punctual, punctual, punctual. Why this a persuasion comes? Because the more you persuade, it is one of the important goal of communication, because ultimately through communication, what you call goals, we want to get a good work to be done. Then comes the last aspect is to get and give information, which is what you call another goal of communication. This is where we do it regularly. We give information as well as we get information. Both are important, because it's not just important that you are giving information. Even what you call to even active listening also important, because when we don't actively listen, the problem is the understanding level will go down. Once the understanding level will go down, that means you are not understood the content. So you have to be very careful. This can happen from the student side too, where the students is not able to get a clear cut information from the teacher. So it might lead to what you call uh, reduce the productivity or output, so which can hamper the goal. So these are the major issues which you can find in communication goals, where one is very having high clarity regarding that. Then we talk all the time communication. For example, now you see the communication process. So if you see here, it starts with all what you call uh, four things are important in communication. There should be a sender of this one, there should be a receiver, a sender who sends the communication or one who conveys the message, a receiver who article takes the message, and in between there should be a message. And to pass on this message, you need to have channel or media. So if these four things are what you call well built in the system, then the things would be easier. So sometimes there could be one-way communication. It can be very much seen in what you call in your mobiles. Sometimes you shout hello, 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 but the thing is, other person can hear what you call hear you, but you are not going to hear the person who you are talking to. So then it becomes what you call one-way communication. Could be what you call due to various factors. But remember that one-way communication also is not a complete communication, and this we call it as a noise effect. So when we talk about this noise effect, the idea is that somebody is blocking the communication, and it might become a one-way communication. And you must have seen in mobile sometimes there could be multiple communications. You have dialed someone and it has gone to someone else, and you can hear a lot of people are talking, which totally not comprehensible for you. Then there is a communication problem. So remember, whenever a sender sends a message to the receiver, in fact, the receiver sends a message back is in terms of feedback. Now the receiver becomes a sender, and the sender becomes the receiver. And it is a two-way process that is more important. Once it is what you call two-way process, the things would be very easier. Otherwise, the communication process is incomplete. Okay, so if you are understood what is the communication process, where there should be a sender, there should be a receiver, there should be a message, and there should be a channel or the media to transfer the message. So if these things are there, then the next thing is being in a class or outside, how best we can effectively communicate. What are the tips for the communication issues? So if you see the next slide, we call it as 7 C's of effective communication. When you talk about 7 C's of effective communication, remember it has seven of the C's, which are what you call considered as the thing for go for effective communication. We'll be discussing in short one by one. So it starts with the completeness, then conciseness, then consideration, then clarity, concreteness, courtesy, and correctness. Remember, all these 7 C's are important for a complete, better, and effective communication. Otherwise, there could be problems. See the first one, completeness. Think as a teacher, if you don't give complete information from beginning to the end, or suppose you are taken a topic, and if you don't give a complete information from what you call beginning to end, and a good beginning and a concluding end also important in between the main material, if it is not completed, then your communication will not be effective. Now what happens then? Because with the incomplete information, there will be a half knowledge. So when there is a half knowledge, when the student is not completely engrossed with the complete knowledge, it could may not enhance his skills even to write, because he has understood only half. And the problem is not the students, the problem is with the teacher, where the teacher has not given the complete information. Then it can lead to what you call again, ultimately our idea is to make our student to have a good grades and manage things better. So in such cases, when the completeness is not there, there could be issues related to that. The next part is the conciseness. The conciseness refer to the brevity. Now remember, because now we are in the age of NEP age, earlier we were in the semester age, CBCS, FCBs, then regular semesters, much before that annual system. And now today we are in what you call NEP, where we have to really rush, because you have what you call discipline this one discipline papers, DSC papers, there are several such this one is there, and there are open electives, there are what you call compulsory papers. Now what happens, because we have got a limited time as teachers, so though we have to give a complete information, it has to be put in a concise form. Remember, the moment it is concise, including all the content, then it can lead to a effective communication. If it is not concise, remember our own students might get bored. Once they get bored, whatever you teach, it's of no use unless you keep them under motivation. Not even showing up. Hello, that is the conciseness part where we are going to talk about it, where your material should have a lot of brevity, but it is there even in what you call in major institutions like IITs or IIMs. They follow this very shrewdly, where conciseness of an material to be conveyed in a better form. Then comes consideration, whom we are addressing. That is also more important, because this may not be both just for a classroom. Are we addressing the student folk, or are we addressing, because suppose we are going outside and teaching them, outside having a guest lectures, or you have been called for to give a lecture on a specific topic. Now you have to be very careful whom you are considering as your audience. Now accordingly you have to communicate, because with the students you cannot use high end language. At the same time, with the experts and all, you cannot use very simple language. So you have to be very careful with what kind of crowd or the audience where you are dealing with. Then the next aspect is the clarity part. Remember, this is most important thing. If clarity is not there, the entire aspect of communication will be failed. Of course, we don't have, I don't have any material now, right, to what you call give an exercise for you. But clarity is in such an important thing. If there is no clarity in the content, that leads to ambiguity, confusion. Once there is ambiguity and confusion, the understanding part will be less, Once the understanding part will be less, the ultimate reproduction part also less in terms of writing. So clarity and preciseness is also important. The next part is concreteness. So when you talk about concreteness, remember how strong is the material. Now this is the analogy of a concrete of a building. Now the concrete is strong, the building is also strong. The same thing here, the analogy is, if your concreteness in the study material is strong, the student understanding is also strong, the communication part is also very strong in that part, which leads to what you call enhanced performance. Then the next part is the courtesy part of it. Now this is more going into the consideration and courtesy part, because the way we communicate, the courtesy also matters. How do you communicate at home is totally different what you communicate in the your respective colleges. Now this is what you call whom you are addressing with. Now once the idea of whom you are addressing with, remember courtesy plays a major role. With your principal, your way of communication is totally different. With your colleagues, the way you communicate is very different. And with the students, you have to come to their level, and that courtesy you have to maintain. So there are varieties of ways. That's why if you maintain the same level of courtesy everywhere, you will not be having an effective communication person. So you'll be what you call a kind of a what you call person who is using what you call a layman style of living, which is not expected from a teacher. Then the last one more important part is the correctness of material. Now why this is important? Because being teachers, we cannot give misleading information to the students, because the moment you give misleading or ambiguous or beating around the bush content, now that leads to ineffective communication. And this, by giving misleading information, the student might have a negative idea on this. It can happen. The best example is nowadays we talk about WhatsApp. Now along with WhatsApp, WhatsApp has got a very negative comment too. So we refer it as WhatsApp universities. I think a few of you heard about this word, WhatsApp university. That means what? Whatever has come in WhatsApp is not correct. So that is why you cannot believe the article content part. I'm not telling all, at least few of the contents which are there on the WhatsApp, which are circulated or forwarded through a written communication, may not be a right one, having a precision or clarity or concreteness. But remember the amount of disaster it does if these contents or the messages which are not real in nature and people perceive it as what you call a real ones, then there could be big problems, not only at the local level, it could be on the nation level, it could be at the what you call continent level, or it could be on a global level. So correctness of information is very important. Along with all this uh, so that's why being a teacher, when you deal with the students, please see to that the correctness of information is reaching to them. Otherwise they might start, because nowadays, as I said in the previous session only, nowadays our students are extra smart. Whatever you have said, they may record or they may write down, and they may check it in the what you call net or textbooks. Now if there's no correctness, next day they might say, sir, you have done something wrong, and that is not expected, where teacher is not expected to give incorrect information. But to have effective communication, correct information is always better. So these seven things, we call it as seven C's of effective communication. There could be more. I'm just on the spur of the things. This can be meant for the best what you call C's for effective communication. So if you have understood this, next slide will be on what is this communication. Communication is nothing but an experience. So what is this experience? So the experience comes through hearing, that what you hear is important. Then what you smell also important, because communication is not just related to only classroom. What you see also important, because sometimes what you see may not be true. You'll be having one exercise later. Then what you taste also you communicate better. And lastly, what you touch also makes you what you call as a one of the process or one of the entity in the communication. Now, whatever it may be, communication, as we discussed, it is a series of experience that is more important, and these experiences will never stop. They'll be there in and out. So though we say during night we sleep, but our brain is active. The brain also gets a lot of series of experience, but to just restore our sleep, the brain just takes it, and it can be conveyed in a different way. So in the during sleep also the communication process happening inside the body, but which we are not aware of. Plus, most of those activities are under autonomic nervous system. So these things can be also discussed, but ultimately to say that communication is a series of experience over several decades of the life of an individual. So having that, we'll move on to the next types of communication. In the introductory part, I said there are 5 types of what you call communications are there. Though usually we restrict to the first two, that is verbal and non-verbal communication. But remember, both of both these two are major types of communications, where verbal and non-verbal. But along with that, there are written communications, touch communication, and chemical communication. Right now, what I'm doing is verbal communication, where I'm talking from my place and you are listening in your places, where I'm using a language, and this language is a common language for everyone. Using English as one language, I'm trying to convey that my ideas to you. So whenever some verbatim is exchanged through what you call oral ways, then when you talk, then it becomes a verbal communication, where the material is conveyed through simply in a common terminology through the talk. So this could be over the phone, this could be direct one-to-one talk, it could be on a video call, whatever it may be. The idea is you use a language here. So once you use a language, it could be any language, Kannada, English, Hindi, or any local or new languages. So whenever the word is being used using a language, I think then all those categories would come under verbal communication. And the second part, you have non-verbal communication, the entire what you call world of communication, which I'm going to show a slide later. If it is 100%, what you call 85% or more than 85% of our communication is non-verbal. So the meaning of non-verbal communication is very simple, where in non-verbal communication you don't use the what you call wordings, or you don't use verbal communication, you don't even exchange language, use language based words. Here the non-verbal communication basically depends on the what you call gestures and postures, that is more important, expressed by you, so that your gestures and postures what you have expressed is easily understood by your students or the family members or your neighbors or even relatives. So in nonverbal communication, it's roughly translated as body language, how we are using different gestures and postures. We are trying to convey what we want to convey to the other person. For a simple example, when you talk about non-verbal communication, I'll give examples later. Okay, there are more than 30,000 gestures and postures. Again, I'm repeating, there are more than 30,000 gestures and postures have been identified by the anthropologists, and there are a lot of intricacies in understanding the specific gestures and postures, because one gesture in one angle gives one meaning, whereas the same gesture in different angle gives a different meaning. Though the gesture is same, by changing angles the meaning would be also changing. That's one thing where we are depending upon the context, one has to understand what is happening, then only he has to communicate through body language. So the one of the simple and the universal gesture is a laugh, or a simple laugh, which will be discussed more on that later. uh, how the laugh conveys a lot of importance in life. Okay, Then comes written communication. Remember, when you talk about written communication, it is something like you write something, and through this writing you communicate something with one person or many people. Because if it's one to one, that's individual communication. If you're communicating to a group, then it's individual to group communication. So the best example is, earlier you used to write letters. Earlier you used to write what you call, the letters have been replaced by now emails. Even what you send through your what you call any app, internet app, any message using a language, then it becomes a written communication. Remember, when it comes to written communication, nowadays it is because of the advanced technology, where people are using a lot of chats or chat apps, and they are trying to send the messages, and these messages also contribute to what you call written communication. Then comes touch communication. Remember, when you talk about touch communication, it's basically touching the other individual. Remember, you have to be very careful in your workplace, especially when touch communication comes to, or where touch communication involves opposite sex individual. Because the communication, though you are given with an affection, the person, especially in opposite sex part, where they might think that okay, there could be harassment. So be careful what you call in the touch communication part, whether it could be students or whether it could be your colleagues. The thing is, there can be high misunderstanding by touch communication. So I would advise you to avoid the touch communication in your institute. Because in institute, if you use more and more what you call touch communication, it could be threatful for you. There could be a threat that you might lose a job because of the other tag called as harassment. Because even repeatedly irritating the person is not a good idea, that too with the touch communication, with the touching. So there could be a problem. But remember, same touch communication can do wonders at home. Because at home, sometimes even husband wife quarrel, or husband this or father and son, or daughter and mother, or son and mother, or daughter and father. So all these relationship can be easily managed through touch communication, which without your knowledge you must have already done these kinds of things. Why? Because uh, whenever this one what you call your spouse may be in distress, what you do is you don't talk much. You just go and press the shoulder of the spouse. That gives the idea that you are with her. That's enough. The spouse has understood that yes, okay, my husband or wife is with me. That's more than enough. You are not going to talk that I am with you, you do have a problem. No, not that way. So but this touch communication, that's why I said, it can create or it can make wonders at home. But in the workplace, you have to be extra careful uh, to use these what you call touch communication. Because it can be easily misunderstood by, nowadays, why not only, why only opposite sex, even the same sex individuals, if you touch, they might think that you may have some negativity or some other intention. Or with the students, if they use a what you call a touch communication, not a good idea. Better to avoid such what you call communication parts, where touch communication involved, especially in your workplace. I'm again underlining, especially in workplace. But at home, definitely use more of body language as one of the part as touch communication. See the changes. That's why you see uh, the mothers or the fathers, before they send their small child, they pat and what you call send. Why? That gives a lot of confidence for the child. So it's the same thing here also. But please restrict your communication, especially touch communication part, to the what you call the family side. Whereas you should be careful on your office side, where you have to be very careful to use touch communication. The last type of communication is chemical communication. Remember, in chemical communication, not much what you call research done is on human beings. But in animals and what you call ants and all, already the research is done. And if you see the ants trail, because there could be thousands and thousands of ants are there, they don't just jump, they follow one another. We must, if you have seen ants trail, and if you break the trail by a finger, a new trail will be formed. Now, how this will be formed, that is more important, because if you think that with the ants, they have got very poorly developed eyes. Now, entire system works on what you call one of the chemical hormone called as pheromone. So, this pheromone, based on this pheromone link, they follow one ant to the next ant. So, because of the pheromone secretion, now this is what you call chemical communication, where something is influenced, some chemical is influencing in your communication aspects, and thereby the person executes the function. So this is very much recorded in what you call uh, chemical communication, where you can see even in a forest and all, because I don't know how many of you know that the tigers are living solitarily, but they do a scent marking for a few what you call acres. It goes and it urinates and makes what you call uh, gives the idea for the other intruder,
Very
any
good.
animal, that I am already here. This can be seen more with the tigers, because in among tigers they make the scent marking, and the moment the other tiger comes and it gets the idea that okay, somebody is already occupied the place. So this is done through scent marking, but it is basically, it is spread through chemical communication. And remember how sometimes animals, and your why animals, your own what you call pet dog must be very good in chemical communication, because it can go and identify things in no reason. But we don't use much of this chemical communication, and for our understanding purpose, for the next what you call few aspects, we'll be bothered more about verbal and non-verbal communication. That's more important. As I already discussed, if you see the communication part, I said a large portion, almost 85% is non-verbal, where our gestures and postures are used mainly, whereas only what you call some 5 to 7% is the pitch or tone which we add to it, and remaining will be the what you call the talk part of it. That is more important. So the entire communication, again, you can see the more is for uh, the aspects of non-verbal communication. Verbal is what you call just say 5 to 8%, as well as the pitch and tone which give to them is again 5 to 8%. So totally making them this one as what you call 100%. But remember, now you understand how much is non-verbal communication is required. The same thing can be transferred, because now your gestures and postures gives a lot of communication to your teachers, sorry, your students. So this is more important, where when the teachers communicating along with what you call the regular verbal talk, they should use few of the non-verbal clues. That is also important. That's why in the last class I said don't stand at one place. That also because it will communicate something very different for the students. So more of such issues will be there. So but even in our day-to-day life, we say most of the time we end up in what you call non-verbal communication rather than verbal communication. That is more important. Then, since I said it is more what you call important, because it constitutes 85% of our total communication, then what are the issues what you call related to that? So you start with the first one, ways of talking, pause, stressful and the words. This is important because this is what we do in the class. What we do is we pause. So we are continuously speaking, we give a pause. That means after the pause, there is a clue for the student that something important is going to come. So this pause makes all the students to turn and see you. That is more important. Otherwise, monotonously speaking without giving a pause, now there's a problem. So why I'm saying give a pause. Once you give the pause, everybody's attention will be on you, because earlier your contest is speaking, suddenly you are stopped. So that calls for attention from the students. So that's the first part. Then the second part is the posture. So how the posture will be there inside the class. As a teacher, you should never bend and or put your head down and walk. That's not a good idea at all. Always you should look straight. There should be chin up position, and while you're walking, people should get to know okay the weightage of yours, not the physical weight. The way you walk itself should be having a grace for the students. Like see how our teacher moves, how our teacher walks. So that is more important. So the posture part of it. Then the next part is appearance. Is also is a what you call important thing. How a person appears. Now more because it communicates a lot. If you what you call some teachers are there, they come with such a what you call good or excellent kind of appearance where you can even see the crease of the ironing and not even a single dot of what you call this one dust or anything else, and they're so sharp where they are going to maintain their dress habits where the and because of this the appearance looks better. So that also is one of the what you call a component. Then head movements or nodding, this is also this one, especially when the student answering, if you do not nod your head, that means it shows a disapproval. Try to understand. Whereas head movements, if you nod, it gives an approval. So straight nod and parallel nod, parallel nodding is giving more of negative, whereas straight nod gives more of positive way of communicating. Then hand movements, we call it as using of hands or torso expression is also important. Rather than standing at one place and explaining, the moment you use your hands for explanation, they do it. You must have seen at many places how the hands are being used as a effective effective non-verbal communication tool. Then eye movements. These are the minor things. How many of you really bothered about your eye movements inside the class? So that is also important because are you going to show the article surprise? Are you showing the fulfillment? Because whether your eyebrows are goes up or not, or your article uh, eye is becoming article giving a signal that you are sleepy, whatever it may be, eye movements gives lot of communication. Then facial expression, a series of expressions can be shown from all the what you call emotions. They could be mostly primary emotions, primary emotions of happiness or primary emotions of sadness. So these two things can make an individual very different by what you call using facial expression, and you must have used this expression inside the class when you're irritated or when you're disturbed by of one or two students. You must have stared them seriously. You have not talked anything. You must have stared them. The moment you have stared them, they must have got what you call idea that our teacher is not happy with what we do. So the staring itself, the facial expression has given lot of impact for the individual that either some activity is to be continued or activity need not be continued. So that's the idea. Then body contact and shaking hands, be careful because this is one of the component. Because when you say body contact as well as shaking hands, now the problem is how well the other person receives it. No, you may be interested in shaking hands, but the problem is how the other person is what you call going to receive it. So you have to use that skill also if the person likes or not. Then cleanliness, closeness, okay, that's also more important because when you talk about closeness, remember everybody has got the personal space, and if any person invades the personal space, then the person who is in under that personal space might get disturbed or might be uncomfortable. So next time the person might avoid you. So never get into trying to get into the individual's what do you call space, because the moment you are intruding to the territory, the person might retaliate because the person may not be expected it. The person might what you call neglect and change his posture or change his face also, just because you have what you call without permission, you have what you call invaded the other person's space. So that is one has to be very careful. Then comes the sounds. Okay. Even sounds in the sense, for example, one of the example I want to give you laughing here. So a mild laugh also gives lot of positivity among students, not a crooked laugh or a wicked laugh. Because the moment you have a crooked laugh, that means you are indirectly targeting some students. So that's not a good idea. Let it be open and a simple smile. Now, having all this concept, what you call in this, teaching as a process of communication, how you can make your communication part better. So start with this. Okay, In the process, we will begin with the teacher, textbook, writer, TV, presenter, radio. Who is doing this? Because remember, nowadays, right now we are communicating through online. During Corona period, also you must have seen the pros and cons of the what you call the online communication. So whether it could be a TV, it could be a presenter, radio broadcast, or it could be Skype. So who and what is required? So you should be knowing the content of the lessons and textbooks and how you go for it. Face-to-face speech, which is what you call nowadays it's offline classes, or you can use LCDs and any of the audio video visual techniques to use pictures, films, slides, or sometimes few of the institutions have got radio broadcasting, and this radio broadcasting is on a specified time. So teaching can be used as process in this also, or using a TV also. And whom we are teaching? A group of learners. Now remember, when you're teaching the learners, we should have something in our mind whom we are teaching. That is more important. And with what effect? That's also important. What kind of reaction they have regarding your class, as well as the feedback part, like whether they liked it or not, or whether the editing part is required, changes were required. All that can come under feedback part. Now, in short, remember communication in education. So, what you teach is important. Teaching of a content part through a methods or to instructions, then the communication is such a larger part where media and you can use a media for instruction. That's also this one, or your own what you call voice recording also can be used. Then there are few things are important. When there is no projected media, one has to go for software approach. When there is a projected media, you have to go for a hardware approach. That is more important because both things are important in communication in education. You can read this more because we have to finish another two skills. But important thing is how we communicate in educational scenario is more important. It could be content of method or instruction. It could be communication with the projected or non-projected is, or what kind of approach we use, whether it's a software approach or hardware approach. That's also most important. Then you see now, if you come to the specifically the classroom communication, try to understand when you talk about classroom communication, who are the senders now? We are the teachers are the senders. We formulate, we encode, and we transmit. And see down somewhere, what you call, there is a receiver. And how this will be done? Formulation, encoding, and transmission through a message via medium. It could be signs, symbols, or etc., which reaches the student as a receiver or a learner. Now, student in turn, what you call, transmits, decodes, and interprets because the students need to have this, which ends up as a message, and that message has to be reached to you called through a medium. Now, this is what you call a kind of classroom communication aspect where though it is not one way as exactly said in the beginning, it starts from formulation, encoding, and transmission through a media with the sign symbols and all whatever you want to use which reaches them. They in turn they transmit, they decode and interpret through the message which through again one more media through a back to you. Now within this framework, a teacher as a sender and learner or a student as a receiver, a lot of processes would happen in between. And as a good communicator, you should be knowing that what is happening inside the class, and while communication process happening, then it is important to see that who is actively involved and who is not actively involved in the communication. So these are the intern what you call aspects of classroom communication and all. Uh, Next is a part of like no, in our day-to-day life and even inside the class, how we have to maintain and how we have to manage our communication. Because as we have said, even the body language is important. So the first aspect in body language is how to maintain our distance with the others. That is also more important. That is technically called as the territories and zones, because in English language there is a saying that, okay, maintain your distance. Now why this is required? Because by not maintaining the distance with what you call, there are several things have been reported that the teacher is what you call invading the privacy, where the physical privacy of the student or the colleague. That can also happen. So if you are aware of these territories and zones, because imagine every one of us carry an imaginary air bubble around us. So it's kind of our what you call personal space. When anyone invades this personal space, we feel offended. The moment we are feeling offended, we are becoming more uncomfortable. So, accordingly, the body language experts and anthropologists have identified four territories and zones which are very important to understand. The starting with the first one is called the intimate zone, then comes the personal zone, then comes the social zone, and then comes the public zone. So the intimate zone is restricted to only your near and dear ones, especially it is restricted to the family members, your spouse and children, because the distance here just varies from touching to not more than 1.5 foot. That means where touching what you call is basically for children and spouse, where you permit into your privacy or personal space. The personal space cannot exceed more than 18 inches. So that is called as intimate what you call zone, where very near and dear ones are allowed, not others. And this is mostly what you call at a very private space. Then comes the personal space, where now when a personal space, it is much more extended than the intimate space or the territory. In a personal space, the closeness can be 1.5 feet to 2.5 feet. Far off could be not more than 5 feet or 2.5 to 4.5 feet. Now what happens in this? Now this is used when this is with your close friends, not the relative. This is a close friends where you can maintain this much of distance. Then go to the social zone. Now, where you are gone for a party, where you gone for a birthday party or a marriage and all, where there's a called as a social zone, or you have invited some people to your place. Now, it refers to a social zone from close distance of 4 to 7 feet and far off distance of 7 to 12 feet. It could be on a religious gathering, but it is somewhat what you call much more than the personal space. But the last one comes is a public space, where in public space, as the word itself says, the distance is vast or it is far off. The closeness can range from 12 to 25 feet. Far is more than 25 feet. Now this can be what you call made analogy with the listening to a speech by a political or a religious leader, and those leaders, either political or religious, they are far off from you, and this distance can be very much what you call far off. But remember, there is a lot of practical significance in maintaining the territories and zones. The more the distance is, the lesser the intimacy. The lesser the distance you keep with the other person, it indicates that you are more close, or you are more attached to each other. So this is can be very easily can be understood by how you maintain the distance with others, as well as how other people maintains distance with you. And this can be seen between students also, where how they are maintaining distance between themselves as well as between the teachers. That also important. And by just what you call having a rough calculation of this, you can understand whether the person is close to you or he is not close to you, based on this kind of calculations. And don't ask from where do you get this what you call this calculation. This is all from research, because the research is being done from several thousands of people, and this data has come from thousands of people, not just what you call uh, only few instances or few examples. Now, the important issue is when someone invades our space, what happens? As I said, we carry an imaginary air bubble, which is called as a very much what you call you keep it as very cautious. That's more important. So when others are invading my space, which is the closest space, a person might feel troubled. That is not good. You might get defensive also. That's also not good, because too much of defense also not good. And because of the what you call confusion, the person might become aggressive also. Why the person is approaching so near to you, or why is invading your space? And it is so embarrassing to to look the face of other person. And because of this, being feel troubled, being feel defensive, and becoming aggressive, you might retaliate for no reason. Now this is where you have to be what you call very careful. So better we maintain the space rather than others are trying to maintain space. So we if we start maintain the space with this what you call distance with the others, I think it is safer and better. So where are the classical examples you can see in this? Now the best example is like no, in bus stands. If it's a crowded bus stand, and if the bucket seats are there, there's no gap between one person to other person. Have you seen their face? Like they're not looking into each other's face. Why? Because they're not close to each other. Or it could be in what you call in an elevator, where in an elevator, if there are so many people are there, everybody is looking at the counter of the floor counters. And when the door opens, everybody wants to rush outside, just because they don't like invasion of their space. This can happen even in what you call uh, traveling in bus stand and bus and all, where if there is an empty what you call bus is there, usually you look for window seat rather than a seat which is in the center. Or even in the cinema theaters, you look for what you call seat which is preferably less crowded. All this indicates that you want to maintain the territories and zones so that your social distance will be safe. So that's the idea in what you call maintaining the space. And again, I'm repeating in English, there is a golden rule: maintain your distance, good for you as well as good for others. Especially in the education institutions, you have to maintain distance with the opposite sex people, because they might confuse with you why the person is approaching or coming so near. You may not have any intention, but the person who is perceiving may be negative. Then you end up with the problem, because nowadays the rules and regulations are quite strict, because you cannot invade the privacy of the other person. So indirectly, don't give a communication idea that you want to be very close. That's also not a good idea. Being a teacher, you have to maintain equal distance from all the students. So by then the students also think that you are very what you call you are impartial in this one. Otherwise they might have a what you call tagline for you later. Then the next aspect is what you call the mask we wear. Yes, as a teachers, do we wear mask? I'm not talking about the corona mask, I'm telling about the personality mask. So when you talk about the personality mask, do we wear masks? Definitely yes. For example, you don't like your colleague or your head of the department, but you need to smile, or you need to respect, though you don't want to respect. Now it's called as a public smile. A clothing itself is a masking, because why you are so specific type of clothing? Because it is to mask. Then sometimes, even if you are not happy, you have to show happiness what you call on your face. Otherwise, it happens when though you are not, you're sad, there are some what you call issues happened at back home. But this article, though you are angry or sad, these kinds of expressions cannot be shown inside the class. So you have to change the expressions. That's called as putting on your face. So you have to do that. And these are all called as public masks. Then sometimes there are extended territories are there, where the mask can be used on the road or at the work. But remember, when you talk about this, it's not a good idea all the time to wear mask, because the more you wear mask, the reality touch will be less. So the question is, can we drop masks? Now, remember, when you talk about what you call dropping the mask, not an easy idea, because the moment you drop the mask, your personality mask, other people may not like it. Being very straightforward talk, few people will not like it, because sometimes a teacher could be very strict and very what you call disciplined, and this discipline may not be liked by others because it could be regarding the attendance part, it could be giving IA marks, it could be giving C1 or it could be C2s. So whatever this one, then other person might think you in a negative way. So dropping the mask is not an easy job, and we have to wear different masks at different places. The mask which you wear at the education institution cannot be worn at home, because you cannot be a teacher at home and you cannot be a father or mother at in your college. So we have to keep changing our masks. So that's the idea, and accordingly we have to behave. So because the way we communicate at home and the way we communicate at our institution is very different. So few of the quick gestures to understand your own students. Okay, uh, openness and honesty, because usually they say an open palm gesture indicates that okay they are honest. See the first picture. In the first picture, what you call, you see the person with the open palm. We say open palms indicate honesty. Like suppose you are doing an enquiry with the student, and if a student uses this kind of what you call gesture with the open palm, and the student says I don't know, that means the student really doesn't know. But if the same student puts his hands in the pockets and talks I don't know, that calls for more inquiry. So this is even watched by judges or lawyers inside the court, because they look for honesty gestures. Then there are what you call palm gestures. Please be careful about this, because there are few palm gestures what you call which are not good to be used. For example, if you see the fourth palm gesture, that is called as pointer. Now, what is this pointer? Is you are pointing someone. Now, remember, these pointers are irritating, because suppose you point out like this, the fourth one, the person who receives this point or pointer gets irritated, because this pointer comes with the what you call an order or an arrogance. So it is like if you are telling a student, okay, get me a glass of water or get me that book, using the pointer. Now what this pointer, this one, no, the student will definitely will get you the book or the things you are asked, but is not happy. But if you use the gesture which is on the right side, asking them, can you get this please? Along with the gesture, the language also changes. The use of language and the severity and the what you call lightness of this thing also will change. So the student will be more happy if you use this gesture rather than the pointer gesture. And the pointers have created conflicts and fights between colleagues and other people, because many times it has happened there, it has ended up in fights. So don't give chance for such what you call things where what you call you're trying to irritate them. And this is the thumbs up, we're covered with the winning position. This is showing all the directionality. This is the submissive palm position, because you use these palm gestures according to the situation. So where with the elderly or with the senior persons you use submissive palm positions, or with the your juniors you use a dominant palm gestures. Of course I cannot give all those what you call uh, demos here, because it's a offline class, online class. If it online class I would have given all the demos. Then even shaking hands have got lot of what you call importance, where how you shake hands also important, because sometimes the best handshake will be, if you see the what you call third type, what you call, this is called as a best handshake, where there is no tilting of the hands, there is no submissive, there is no dominance. Both are what you call shaking hands having equal gravity and parallelness, where you see and the fingers are closed. If you see here the first one, where this must be definitely your senior or the boss, and you are having a submissive handshake. If you see here, where this person is now the boss and you'll be the this one receiving end. And sometimes you can find glove handshake, where your hands are taken from other person and the other person holds your hands through a kind called as a glove, like a cricket glove. Now again, now some research is done on this. Now the research has clearly said, if a new or a stranger does a glove handshake to you, don't believe him, because you don't know the person, and the first time person comes and gives you the handshake. So this is also called as politician's handshake. Why? Because a glow handshake, always the person who does glow handshake with you is the idea that he is expecting something from you, because there is some selfish motive behind, could be there. I underline the statement, when a stranger does. Please understand that when a stranger does this kind of what you call handshake, it is what you call, be careful about it. But the other side of it, what is that other side of it? When your close friend does it, that shows more closeness, more intimacy. So that shows that more intimacy. So don't get confused when if your close friend does this, whether this person expecting something from you. No, it is only when the stranger does such things, be careful. But if your friend does something, if your close friend does it, it shows that you are more close. So shaking hands also got all those things. Then how do you look also important. Now remember, stay there are looking, there are three things even inside the class: staring, glances, and appraisal. Now what you mean by staring is you give what you call, seriously give a look, which you do if some students are creating what you call some nuisance in the class. If they're mischievous, you just stare at them. Indirectly you are given a communication that you don't like this behavior. So which will be dehumanizing or challenging your own what you call virtues. And remember, staring too much also not a good idea, because the rules are very much stringent now. You cannot stare a woman, especially a male teacher cannot stare a woman for a longer duration of more than 16 seconds. They can even find article sue you, or they can put a case against you. The best one is the glances, that is socially acceptable timing. The glances is you look and what you call, you change your what you call way you look. This one you shift your glance. So that means you are watching the entire class and not watching a particular person for a longer duration. And this is socially accepted and acceptable timing also. Then there could be appraisal. When you just look at when a student answers something, somebody is online, please mute yourself. So there could be appraisal. Now remember, this will indicate interest. Now excuse me, somebody is online. Please mute yourself.
ಸರ್ ಯಾರ್ದೋ ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಅನ್ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ.
Okay. Now remember, do you look when you talk? Very important, because if you don't look when you talk, that shows that you are not interested. You are just giving a what you call a monotonous lecture, or just what you call the for the sake of talking you are talking. That's one part. No, you should not do that. Then the second part is, do you look when you listen, which is very important, because when somebody is telling, if you don't look at them, that means you're not interested. And nowadays it is more after the mobile invasion, because even when the other person speak, the people are more bothered about watching their mobiles. It's called as a pubbing phenomenon. Now this shows that when you don't look when you talk, or when you don't look when you don't listen, all this shows that the person is not interested in the talk. And the same thing can happen with your students. So you have to be very, when a student asks question, you should really listen it and look and listen. That means you are giving a lot of what you call attention to it. If you're not giving attention, you are, that means it's a passive attention, which is not well what you call appreciated by others. So be careful about how you do look and how do you manage inside the class. Then how do you walk is also important. As a teacher, what you call, never bend and walk, never put your head and bend and walk, because the walk with the long strides and straight posture conveys what you call self confidence. I given just a picture. Okay, a person with the long term goals, the one who is willing to take risk. A teacher should be like that. Okay, having a long term goals, to willing to take risk, and walking straight and a straight posture. Because students evaluate what you call, student evaluate your walking. Remember, even if outside also they say how our teacher walks. And if you walk in a weird way, they might imitate you. And while what you call teaching inside the class is a open torso or expression. Okay, you have to keep exposed what you call this one center body open all the times by keeping your hands and arms uncrossed. That's why in the last session I said avoid podiums, open your torso. The more you open your torso and express your what you call hands and arms, because the moment you uncross you have to use a lot of body language, and this will have very good impact on the student rather than just sitting at one place. These are not this one evaluation gestures for the what you call while taking the class or while you are engaged in the class. Look for these gestures, whether the students are using these gestures. Remember the first gesture. The first one is called as first two are called as evaluation gesture. The next one is called as decision making plus evaluation. The next part, if you are seeing evaluation plus decision gestures, imagine all these gestures will indicate that I think from HRDC, please identify the person, please. Who is the person speaking continuously?
ಇಂಡೋಗ್ರೇಷನ್
ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ ಸರ್ ಇದೆ
ಪಾರ್ಟಿಸಿಪೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾರಾ?
ಪಾರ್ಟಿಸಿಪೆಂಟ್ಸ್
ಬೇಕು, ಬೇಕು, ಮಾತಾಡು.
ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ
ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ?
ಇವರು ಡಿಸ್ಟರ್ಬೆನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾವ್ರೆ.
ಯಾರು?
ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ
ಶಿವ?
ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅನ್ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ತಿರ್ಗಾ
ನಮ್ದು ಇದೆ ಕಣ.
Okay, the evaluation gestures. Remember, while considering these evaluation gestures by students, be careful, because that shows that they are evaluating your talk. Because the moment they evaluate their talk, that means something is really questionable. So if you are doing the right job, yes, their evaluation is right. But because nowadays what happens, they may read in advance and come to class, and when you go away from the original content, now the evaluation begins whether the person is telling right or wrong. If you are telling right, it is fine. But if they are what you call, if you are telling something wrong, they can easily make out that what you are doing. So be careful about that. What you are their gestures. Sometimes they what you call, they show the boredom gesture. That means what? They completely what you call lay their hand on their chin complete. That means what? Definitely they are getting bored. So try if they are getting bored, remember, try to change the content part of it or give a break. Then you have emotions, especially among students. What you call? So if a student shows these kinds of expressions like see the depression part, see the anxiety part, see the stress part, definitely they require some kind of attention from your side. It could be depression where hopelessness would be there. It should be anxiety where apprehension could be there. What happens next? Or it could be stress that how to manage the things. All these things are very important. So try to identify these emotions among them and accordingly guide them, because don't think that all the students are come from what you call very good background. Each one have their own background which is varied one, and none of their life is bed of roses. That's also this one. Then the issues are much more complicated, and after the invasion of social media these things are becoming more and more. So how to achieve the effectiveness in classroom communication? Basically by two-way communication where you talk and you allow them to talk also. Then get a feedback from the students. That's more important. What did they like? How do what part of the things like the speed part of it, language part of it. And I already said the clarity part is very important. Then motivation to learn is also important. Then use of technology and instructional material where using of LCD, 3D modeling, everything can be used to what you call for effective classroom teaching. And strategies and skills to be understanding also is better. All these things are important. So thereby you can use what you call your own what you call techniques to improve the effectiveness in classroom communication. Now we'll have a break. Now I think it's a break time, right?
Sir,
Sir.
so let me have a break, sir. Tea break.
Okay, sir.
And
Okay,
here
sir.
is
Sir, I'll be-
announcement for the participants. Please wait. Dear participants, please wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Please wait. Lancy, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ ಸರಿ, ಹೋಗಿ ತೊಂದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಜಸ್ಟ್ 2 ನಿಮಿಷ.
ಎಸ್ ಸರ್, ಎಸ್ ಸರ್.
I can exit.
ಎಕ್ಸಿಟ್ ಓಕೆ ಸರ್, ಮತ್ತೆ ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿ ಸರ್, ತೊಂದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
ಎಸ್ ಸರ್. Dear participants, out of 28 participants, only 24 participants gave the information related to certificate. Still 4 more participants have not been given the information. What does it mean? ಇನ್ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು ನಾನು ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ, ನನಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಫಾರ್ ದಿ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಈ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ಬ್ಯಾಚ್ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ನನಗೂ ಬೇಸರ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಮೈಕ್ರೋ ಟೀಚಿಂಗ್ದು PPT ಮೈಕ್ರೋ ಟೀಚಿಂಗ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ದು ಅಪ್ಲೋಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದನ್ನ ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾಯ್ತು. ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರಪೋಸಲ್ ಅದನ್ನ ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಒಂದಿನ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾಯ್ತು. ಸೆಮಿನಾರ್ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ಇಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಹಾಕಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಬರೆದು ಕೇಳಿ ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾಯ್ತು. ಇನ್ನು ನಿಮಗೆ ಕೊಡಬೇಕಾದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಸರ್ಟಿಫಿಕೇಟ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಮಾಹಿತಿ ಕೊಡಿ ಅಂತ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು ಯಾವ್ದು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋದು? ನಿನ್ನೆ ರಜಾ ಇತ್ತು, ಇಡೀ ದಿನ ಬೇಕು ಅದನ್ನು ಬರೆಯೋಕ್ಕೆ. ಇದರ ಅರ್ಥ ಏನು? ಇಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಯುವರ್ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್? ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಈಗ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೇನೆ, 2 ಗಂಟೆಲಿ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೇನೆ 11 ಜನ ಸಬ್ಮಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಇನ್ನೂ ರಿಪೇರ್ ಇದು ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. 3 ಗಂಟೆ ಒಳಗೆ ಸಬ್ಮಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ 4 ಜನ ಇನ್ನೂ ಸಬ್ಮಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನೇ ಈ ಥರ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಆ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಹೇಗೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ದಿ ಕೋಆಪರೇಷನ್ ಆರ್ ಸಪೋರ್ಟ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಗಿವಿಂಗ್ ಟು ರನ್ ದಿಸ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್. ಓಕೆ, ನೋಡೋಣ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಬಿಡ್ಲಿ.
Excuse me, sir.
ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಜಾಯಿನ್ ದ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಅಟ್ 3:40.
Excuse me, sir.
Lloyd,
Sir.
please.
Yes, sir. ಸರ್, ಯಾರ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಸಬ್ಮಿಟ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಒಂದ್ಸಲ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಒಳ್ಳೇದು ಸರ್. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ
ಯಾವ ಹೇಳಿ ಸರ್, ನಿಮ್ಮೂರೇ ಬಂದು ಬರ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ. ನಿಮ್ದು ಯಾವ ಊರು ಸರ್? ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಬಂದು ಬರ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬರ್ತೀನಿ ಹೇಳಿ. ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಟಾಫ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ 5 ಜನ, ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಒಂದೊಂದು ದಿಕ್ಕಿಗೆ ಬರ್ತೀವಿ. ಬರ್ಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಇರಿ ಪಾಪ, ನಿಮ್ಗೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾಕೆ ರಿಸ್ಕ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಪೆನ್ ತರಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಅಲ್ಲಿಗೆ? ನಾಚಿಕೆ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಟೈಮ್ ಕೇಳಕ್ಕೆ, ಯಾರು ಬರ್ದಿಲ್ಲ ಅದನ್ನ ತಿಳಿಸಿ ಅಂತ. ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದನು ಅವ್ನು ಹಣೆ ಬರ ಅನುಭವಿಸ್ತಾನೆ ಬಿಡಿ.
ಅಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಸಬ್ಮಿಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಲ್ಲ ಸರ್ ನಮ್ಗೆ.
ಯಾಕೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಬೇಕು? ನೀವು ಸಬ್ಮಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಿರ್ತಾನೆ ಇಲ್ವಾ?
ಅದೇ ಸಬ್ಮಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದೇನೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನಂಗೆ
ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ದಟ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ನೀವು ನಾವು ಲಿಂಕ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಮೇಲೆ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಅದನ್ನ ಏನ್ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನಾವು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀವಿ. ನಂಬೋತಿಲ್ವಾ? ಮಾಡೋದೇ ತಪ್ಪು, ಅದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಯಾರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಬೇರೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಥ ಬ್ಯಾಚ್ ಕಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಜಾಯಿನ್ ದ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಅಟ್ 3:40. ದಟ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್.